Just talk about, guys that they really like, or, they have favorites. Chris is one of my favorites. I mean, he was and he always will be, and he's going to be just deeply missed by everybody.
He's such a chatty person. He could talk to anybody about anything at any time, and it was amazing. I was always the shyer one that never had anything to say, and he could talk to a wall. He's such an amazing person, and I'm going to miss him.
Honestly, I thought it was a joke. I thought a former player was joking with me. I couldn't believe it. And when I called him back, I was in just absolute shock. I mean, I still am having a hard time wrapping my head around this.
Coach and the girlfriend there, people across the world are still watching this case with horror. A young college baseball player, Christopher Lane, out for a jog and gunned down reportedly for, quote, the fun of it. That's according to what police say the suspects told them. Now the question we're asking, how in the world did we get to this place? A place in society where 3 teenagers, and these are kids we're talking about, 15, 16, 17, would go out and kill somebody just because they didn't have anything else to do. What drives the seeming disregard for human life? Here to discuss, we've got a panel today. Rabbi R.E.A. Sparrow, president of Caucus for America, Janet Morana, executive director of Priests for Life and host of the Eternal Word television network, and also Dr. Jeff Gardere, a child psychologist. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Doctor, I'll start with you because the psychology of this is so hard to understand. I don't even know where to start.
Well, we're really talking here about antisocial, psychopathic behaviors. Look, they didn't just choose this person out of in a random way, which was horrible enough because they were bored. And believe me, there are many, many emotional factors here that we don't yet know about these young men. But what we're being told is one of them actually sang and danced as he was being brought into jail. So when we talk about the utter disregard for human life, how disgusting this is, and where we've gotten to in society, that we do have young people like this in some ways that are part of a culture where we have excluded them, where there are the issues in the world that lead to people not having opportunities, but they have to take personal responsibility, and their families have to look at what was going on with these young people that allowed them to turn into these monsters.
Yeah, and some of the attorneys, one of the attorneys connected with the case talked about the fact that from what he knew of the situation, the kids really didn't have the involvement of parents. One of them, their mother may be in jail. The other said that the fathers weren't really the type of role model they needed, that they were playing violent video games and just basically running around unchecked. Janet, does anybody pour into these kids? I mean, how do they end up where they are?
Well, first of all, we have to start with the fact that since 1973, these kids are survivors. They could have been aborted, and that's a fact that people don't realize.
They're post-Roe v. Wade.
They're post-Roe v. Wade, and therefore there's a thing called survivor syndrome. There's a psychiatrist up in Canada, Dr. Philip Ney, has studied this for decades and shown the effect that just the fact that you could have been aborted can affect you as a survivor of Roe v. Wade. So that's factor one. And of course, like you mentioned, the parents, lack of parent involvement. Well, first of all, the video games and the TV, the violence on TV, TV studies have shown that a child, by the time they're 13, watches over 100,000 episodes of violence on TV, and by the time they graduate high school, it escalates to 200,000. Now, picture the violence, and like the psychologist, that there was no parental involvement really with these children. This all adds to it. They feel disconnected, and also to goals. You know, the young man that was tragically gunned down, he had goals. He was a scholarship. He had aspirations. What were their goals? What were their aspirations? And also, too, for the little bit of parent involvement there was, as a woman I have 3 daughters in their 30s. I've raised children myself. I never let my kids leave the house without asking, where are you going, who are you with, and what are you doing? You know, and nowadays, you know, parents should be doing a check right now to themselves. How are you keeping track of your children, and how are you monitoring the media that is in your home? Because that's how these things happen. They have these devices, the cell phones. Are they watching pornography? What are your kids doing? Yeah, parents really have to do a media check. You shouldn't be in computers locked in their bedroom. And parents use the video games and all this violence on TV as a way of keeping the kids quiet.
Well, and Rabbi, do you think that all of these things have factored into the fact that life is not the special gift? It's not valued the way that maybe it was generations ago. If you have video games that are so realistic, you can pretend to kill people all day, all night, if you want to, on your video games, and maybe be dulled to the extent that a real kill is now the only thing that would get you out of this funk that you're in.
That's absolutely correct regarding this specific instance, but there's even more involved. That has to do with our culture. We were founded originally as a Judeo-Christian culture, a culture based on virtues. We taught our children virtues. What is life and what is honesty? What is responsibility? And instead, we've evolved into a culture of entitlement, of indulgence. We're here, many people believe, just to gratify people. And therefore, it is not a virtuous society as it has been. So it's one where people want to have fun. And they don't realize that what they're doing is drastic to life. They don't appreciate it. They're not taught that in the schools. And many of these children are screwed up because many of the adults have their priorities mixed up. These kids look and they see celebrities who come in and trash places, and yet they're celebrated, and they see all types of immoral things happening, and yet these people are celebrated in the newspapers. So it's a whole skewed value system. We used to be a society based on virtue and accountability, and we've devolved, unfortunately among many, into a society based on entitlement, what's good for me, and indulgence.
But a lot of people will say, though, if you try to bring up these issues about morality, and some people say you can't preach, you can't impose your morality on someone else. But are there some moral absolutes that we can agree? I.e., killing people are not okay.
Killing is one thing. I mean,
but the greatest moral value is learning to love yourself. And what I see with young people like these boys who allegedly did this, they don't get love in the home. We talked about the parents having their own issues, and those parents perhaps were not loved. So if you don't love yourself, if you don't value life, you're not going to value someone else's life.
And we saw some social media that's allegedly linked to one of these suspects where he's saying, come get me, I don't care, I'm not afraid to die.
The greatest moral value is not loving yourself. The greatest moral value is to treat other people with dignity and to know of the sanctity of life and how life is sacred and how one should live with virtue and civility and provide to others dignity. It's not simply to love yourself.
Well,
that's one of the problems.
I think Rabbi was saying the same thing. I think if you do love yourself, you love life, you respect others, and you want to treat others the way that you're respected.
Well, it really comes down to love your neighbor as yourself.
Which is a good place to end. Because that's good advice for all of us.
Perfect place.